Welcome to The Courageous Survivor, Breaking the Chains and Redesigning Me. My name is Paula Walters, and this is the intro to my podcast where I'm going to share my lifelong journey of resilience and transformation. This has been, so I'm 50, and this has been a crazy year or two of my journey. And I realized that as I went back through my life and I recounted my experiences of overcoming child abuse and domestic violence and near fatal strangulation and addictions, mental health, attempted suicide, like all of this stuff, I realized that the first step to changing my life was changing my mindset. And that change really hasn't come until just year 50, till this year. And nobody helped me understand that step when I started recovery until I went to a functional doctor. I went to a functional clinic, and it was amazing the growth that I had from going to see these two doctors at this clinic. And changing the way I see life, changing my mindset has been the absolute foundation of living this life. I mean, I have truly redesigned myself. It has been a hard journey for the people around me. I have really secluded myself over the last couple of years. Like, I can't tell you the last time I truly hung out with anybody. And that's because I had this inner work to do. Everything that I learned, that I was wired from childhood, that I was wired from teenage years, that I was wired from my early adult years, like everything that I knew was like a victim mentality, was lies, was misguidance, it didn't set me up to be my best self. And so I really had to kind of withdraw from everybody and everything so I could research where I wanted to go with my life, what I did and didn't believe. I just kind of had to start all over, basically tear my inner home down to the foundation and the studs and start all over. And I don't know the old Paula. I don't know. I mean, I know her and I love her, and I'm thankful for her, because I look back and I only knew what I knew, what I was taught by the people who are supposed to teach us about, the adult that we want to become. I learned very dangerous cycles of abuse that I was taught that was normal. And so those are the chains of breaking those thoughts and those habits that become normal because that's all you've ever known. And this is one of the things that I say that is very controversial for people. And I truly believe that every survivor should be given their own lane to heal and transform in a way that works for them. In the same way that all of our trauma and patterns and hurts and habits are all different, so will our recovery and redesigning ourselves, our journey for that. And for me, one of the things that led to a lot of healing for me was being able to look at myself in the mirror and realize that I wasn't just the victim all the time, that hurt people do in fact hurt people, and that I was one of those people. I did in fact hurt people. And yes, it was in that fight or flight and doing what's necessary. But I used a lot of people, not intentionally, but I did. I emotionally wrecked a lot of people because of my attachment problems. I hurt a lot of people in my being stuck in fight or flight and being very, being stuck in with my amygdala always hyperactive. I snapped and yelled at a lot of people and hurt them. And so I do have to take accountability for that. And there are a lot of people who shamed me for saying that it's never the victim's fault. Well, the whole reason, my dad was the way he was because of his dad. So most abusers are first abused. And my dad was a victim too. And so where is that line? Yes, he was a victim first, but then he became an abuser. And that's the way it happens with a lot of people like that. And I was the same. And so I have to take accountability for that. That while a lot of my coping mechanisms, my fight or flight, my whatever you want to call it, was very necessary, that doesn't mean that there wasn't collateral damage for other people. And so that was a huge step for me of being able to look at my life that I was both. And there's a lot of people who come at me for that. And again, I'm going to own it. This is my story, my raw and honest story, that I want to shed light on the open struggles of survivors, in the hidden struggles of survivors, because I want to be a beacon of hope. We have to step forward and to be able to say the importance, to recognize the importance of mental health, to the power of resiliency, and being able to be an inspiration to people. And I realized that the first step in me finding this path to this new Paula came from finding another brain injury survivor on social media, from telling her story. And although my story was very completely different from hers, where hers came from a fall while walking her dog, and mine was from abuse, a lot of our symptoms were the same. And that opened the door for me to make it to functional medicine, to a functional neurologist, which led to these two amazing doctors who opened up this education and this whole new vision that I had on my life, that taught me that changing my life and breaking these chains and rewiring, redesigning myself was key. And it wasn't just as easy as looking at my life as, okay, I need to break the habits of being a domestic violence victim. It was that you have to change yourself all the way down to a cellular level. You have to look at yourself structurally. You have to look at yourself metabolically. You have to look at this brain gut connection. You have to look at, your trauma mechanisms, how your fight or flight, like rewiring all of that and being able to step back and really look at these areas of wellness. So re-examining myself spiritually, physically, emotionally, financially, socially, professionally, looking at like even the reason why I changed my job. I have been a paramedic for 20 years. And being able to look at why I love that job, because there's all kinds of trauma, because there's all kinds of chaos. And there was like this part of me that struggles with addictions that like it's easier to see someone else's mess and clean up someone else's hurt and someone else's, emergencies than having to deal with my own. And then the other area of wellness that I had to really, really change was environmental, the stuff I have around me. When I look back at the people I surrounded myself with, and that's one of the things that I learned from my doctor was, the reflection on yourself of the people that you hang around with. There's that saying about, show me who your 5 closest friends are and I'll show you what your future is. And I look back at all the times that after work we would go out and drink and have kegs and eggs and do all this drinking and all of the trauma, all these people who were, healthcare workers who were supposed to be helping other people. And I look back at how a lot of them pointed at me in all of my dysfunction, which I clearly had a lot of it. But a lot of their own dysfunction did not do me any justice. So they too were hurt people hurting other people. And I used to have these people in my life who I wanted to be like. And I would try to kind of change my life a little bit to be more like them. And I realized that, like, I look back and I'm like, oh, this Paula doesn't want to be any of them. And I realized how unhealthy they were for me. And again, having the right people to mentor you, to encourage you, to educate you. There's no one-stop shopping for this work. And that is why it has taken me these last 2 or 3 years of just really staying home, spending time with my dog, reading, researching, reading all of this, all of these studies and listening to podcasts and reading books. And I had to find out for myself. I had to find out what I believe in and why, and just break myself down and truly start fresh. And let me tell you, the Paula that I am now does things that I thought I hated. Like, I have grown to love homesteading, that I love gardening, that I love canning, have 5 dogs that keep my house a filthy mess. And not filthy, but compared to the OCD, wipe my walls down every 2 weeks, mop my floors on my hands and knees, that Paula, who did a lot of things for reasons that were basically, I look back now and I did a lot of that trying to keep myself busy because I didn't want to deal with all of these feelings that I have inside. And now I've learned that it is okay if there is a little dust on the top of the dresser. It's okay to have a dirty dish or two in the sink. It is okay to not sweep the floors every single day. I just had so many unhealthy habits that I said were healthy. And I started to do this podcast because, we have the courageous journey in kind of talking about trauma, but myself as a speaker, I wanted to originally start talking. So when I started sharing my story in 2015, when I started my nonprofit, I look back and I see that I did it from a very, very unhealthy place. I did it with good intention. We started talking about domestic violence. We started talking about strangulation, but it became this part where we talked pretty much just about women and about my journey. And I just told my story, but in this awareness about domestic violence, but we never talked about of how to change it. And I'm just now able to sit there and really understand how you break cycles. And a lot of that does take, understanding, taking your accountability for parts of what happened. Now, I never did anything that deserved me to get hit. I never did anything to deserve to be abused. That is not what I'm saying. Although I think that from the reactions I've got on some of my social media posts, that is what people are hearing. There is facts and there is feelings. And as I've moved from the emotional brain thinking to the rational brain thinking, I understand. I had a part of that. And so I've now decided that instead of just getting up and talking about domestic violence, I mean, we all know what domestic violence is. We all kind of understand the basics of that. And are there people that do that training? Yes, they need to. But I'm understanding that that is not my lane. And I thought that was. And I realized that I have a much bigger story. I have this part of, I was told I would not see 50. I was so unhealthy. I had multiple medical diagnoses. I had multiple medications. I, have just had all of this stuff. And it came to this point where this aha moment over the last several months that it came with changing your mindset. And I worked to become a master mindset coach, to be able to develop these talks and these trainings about domestic violence, about child abuse, and being able to kind of look at that it's not just the story of the incident, but it's the story of how you change it. We are so, in this country, we are so reactive. We have to change to being proactive. And so we have to start talking about look at the world right now. And this is one of the reasons why I really had to kind of draw myself in away from people, is because there is so much negativity, especially with the group of people that I have established in my circle over the last several years. People who don't like their life, but they don't like their job, but they won't leave because they make good money. people who don't like being in the marriage that they're in, but don't want to leave because they're comfortable and they don't know how they'll make it on their own, or people who hate their job but they need the benefits, and it's like you have to change it the way you see it. And that's like, for me, I didn't want to start sharing my story on social media and doing the podcast and especially on my social media, because people come at me so much. But I had to change my mindset there is facts and there is feelings. And people coming at me about their feelings is not my job. It's not my job to be concerned about their input, because what they say is not about me. It is about them. I do a lot of trainings on domestic violence, on child abuse, on brain injury, and I do, in fact, trigger people. And I tell people, if I trigger you with my story, talking about stuff, now there is a completely different thing if I call somebody, a bad name, or if I say something untrue. But for me to talk about, one of the big ones is about obesity and trauma. That triggers so many people. It is factual. There is research study after research study after, book upon book of those things. But people get so offended by it. And the reason why they get offended is because there's something in them telling them that they have something to address. And now I am at a place, and this is where changing my mindset has been a lifesaver, is that I no longer let people's words bother me. Now there's a big difference if someone tries to tell me the sky is red. But again, you're not going to change them. I am never going to be able to change someone's mind. So I rarely ever get into arguments with people, especially over social media. But the thing is, if they say something and it triggers something in me, that is something that I will write on my phone, write in my journal, text myself, whatever it was that they said, whatever I witnessed, because that is something, that is my internal alarm, that is my amygdala, my fight or flight trying to send to me that I have something that is unresolved, something that needs to be addressed. And the thing that I had to learn was, when I was diagnosed with depression, with anxiety, with panic attacks, all that stuff, those were triggers. Those were those internal alarms telling me, hey, we have work to do regarding what you just heard, what you just saw. And so now I capture that moment and I chase it until I figure out why that bothered me. And I've done a lot of healing that way. And I think that, now this isn't factual, although it's there's a book called The Myth of Normal. It talks about this a lot, about how there's a lot of medical diagnoses that are, especially mental health, that are related to like hidden trauma, and the importance of kind of unpacking that stuff. But at the end of the day, being able to have a place where I can go and do this podcast and talk about this amazing journey, because I think that there are people out there. There are a lot of survivors out there. There are a lot of supporters of survivors out there. And there's just some people seeking inspiration. Over the last couple of years, have been seeking people to inspire me. I don't have anybody around me that I'm like, I love this about them. I want to be like that. So I've looked for that online and I found those people. So I want this podcast to be a safe space for courage, for connection, and for this place that we can give unwavering belief, unwavering support, that we all have the ability to redesign our lives, to break the chains, and to rewire all those habits of normal that are absolutely anything but. That we all deserve this chance to have this vision for our life and to be able to chase it. I want to be that place for somebody else that Amy was for me. I want to be able to share some of the amazing knowledge that I have learned from Dr. Eric and Dr. Mike. I want to be able to have other people to be able to feel the peace, the joy, and the complete fulfilling journey that I've been on. And in a world full of podcasts that are about bad things and stuff, I want this to be a place that the world is not bad. Do we have a certain amount of sociopaths? Yes. Are there like truly evil people? Yes. But for the most part, people are inherently good. I think there's a lot of hurt people that have been hurt by others who were hurting, and they don't even understand what has happened to them or what they're doing to others. And if this can be a place that kind of opens that up for one other person, if one other person gets to look at life differently because of my journey, then it is all worth it. So thank you for listening. This is just the one of a weekly episode of a weekly podcast. This is just an overview of this crazy journey. You can go to my website. It will be in the link to the podcast, and you'll learn more about my story, kind of more about my speaking. There's a lot of media links there of different places that my story has been shared. Even when I look back at some of the media stuff from when I was first there in 2015, 2017, 19, I was like, I did everything out of not a healthy heart. I did it out of a wounded and best intentions heart. And there's nothing wrong with it. I've grown. And that's the whole point of the journey, is to change, to be better tomorrow, even if it's just a little bit better than what I am today. And as long as each day I step forward, I'm going the right direction, even if it's just a little bit. And there are days where you're going to take a couple of steps back, and that's okay too, as long as you just don't sit down and quit. You got to get back up the next day, and you got to go forward. So welcome to this journey. Welcome to talking about breaking the change and how to change your mindset about your life. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining me.